Hey, it's News from Heaven. Today we're talking about how wind disperses evil spirits. And there's some meteorology student who's like clicking through YouTube links, doing a little research on wind, and they're like, oh no. Yeah, I'm in a crazy person video. Yeah, look at that guy. He's got a salt lamp in his house. Okay, but wait, in my defense, it's not that crazy, because I'm not just saying any old wind disperses evil spirits. It has to be a spiritual wind. So there, you with me now? But listen, this is my pitch to you, meteorology student. Sure, you are going to know a lot of stuff about how to predict. I mean, you get it right some of the time. What happens, with the atmosphere and with the temperature. But what about the atmosphere in the mind? Why are we under, let's say, we're going through a period of overcast thoughts? And just like life situation is similar, but these things are blocking out the happiness we feel like we should feel. Or you have these looming clouds. Like, why does it feel like this terrible thing is about to happen to me? But then at other times, we get this distinct sensation that like everything's okay, and there are forces on our side, and life is going to turn out good. What is it that can affect, not just predict, but even affect the mental weather? Because here you can try to move, right? But it's very hard to change your internal conditions. And that's just what we're going to look at here in Secrets of Heaven 842. Download for free from Swedenborg.com. Read along with me. And here this is the Swedenborg Secrets of Heaven experience. So he is walking line by line through the biblical text in the beginning of the Bible. It's like, I think it goes through Genesis, maybe all of Exodus. I don't even know. It's like 10,000 entries. And he's saying, guess what? This book that is world famous and a lot of people feel like it's spiritually significant, but yet is also a very controversial and dividing text and has a lot of confusing stuff in there. It's talking about things like wind and mountains and things you find in the world. But yet it's supposed to be from God. What's it all about? Well, this is making that comparison, that metaphor I made before. We've got the physical stuff mirroring what goes on inside of our hearts and minds, which you could call spiritual stuff. So here he's saying, look, where it's talking about seemingly physical things, it's talking about what's going on inside you and me, because it is a message for all of us all the time, because that's what God is talking about. Or so the theory goes. The symbolism of, and God made a wind pass over the earth, and the waters subsided. So we're talking early Genesis here. We've got God. And what's God going to do? Make wind pass over the earth, and the waters subside. Which is fine. It's like you're getting in some kind of early geology lesson, although a lot of geologists would probably dispute that this is how things really went. What does that have to do with us? Well, it has to do with the correspondential meaning, because back in here, there's quite a lot of meaning, quite a lot of applicable commentary on the human experience. Okay, the wind passed over the earth and the water subsided, as putting everything in its proper place. So the symbolism of this, as putting everything in its proper place, is established by the symbolism of wind in the word. So here we're talking about God putting everything in the proper place, which, by the way, the story of creation, each one of us is being created as we go throughout life. That we are initially an egocentric, materialistic being, and just by nature of it. Sure, in childhood you've got some innocence in there and everything's good, but as we grow, we have to wake up to what it is to be loving and altruistic to people, and to push back on the negative tendencies to try to get us to function as these, antagonistic, competitive beings rather than loving, compatible, harmonious beings, right? So each one of us is these waters that need to be put in their proper place. So the wind here that God is using to do that is indicative of a spiritual phenomenon, like a psychological phenomenon that happens all over in all of us. And we're going to see how this plays out on a large scale in the spiritual world. The wind is used as a metaphor, a simile, and even a name that will be a correspondence for all spirits, both good and evil. And some of you may say, well, did you know in the original language, the word for spirit, and when the original language uses the same word for both spirits and the winds. And thank you though for your contribution there. So here we're talking already. We've got a wind that disperses evil spirits. So wait a second. If wind, didn't you say that the wind is a name for all spirits? So is it spirits? Oh, why am I trying to write this out? You launch into a drawing and you think this will be helpful, but by the time you realize, I've got to say spirits and then do a disbursement mechanism here and then try to write evil spirits, which takes so much time. It's like, who is that? Who is this helping? But you can't help it because you already launched into it. Okay, so somehow, what does that even say? Spirits disperse evil spirits? That seems like a strange equation. Evil spirits being, oh, you already know. This is any of us when we are devoted to what is egocentric and harmful to other people. So how, that doesn't make any sense. Spirits disperse evil spirits. We'll have to see what are they talking about. By they, I guess I mean Swedenborg. During our struggles, which are the waters that subsided. Okay. Already, as shown before, it is evil spirits that flood in. Already, we're not talking about, here in this creation story, about some beautiful planet Earth that looks like this with its continents, right? And an island. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about every single one of us with our beautiful profile heads. You just stop commenting on your art. Sorry. Each of us, here's the Earth, right? The Earth is in here. And we've got our struggles. Weren't we just talking about our struggles here? All this stuff that flows in and causes us unnecessary suffering. Like, I want to put a little dividing line between the stuff that's harming us from outside. Let's say it's coronavirus, or let's say it's the hostile actions of other groups of people, something like that. So this here represents, I don't know why, it represents external stuff that's looking to harm us. Okay, that's one thing. That's a challenge, right? But there's also our own struggles. And sometimes these work in tandem and sometimes they don't. But there's a lot of extra baggage coming from in here. And so all this, the sum total of that is the waters. And what causes the waters? How do the waters get into us here? Like on Earth, there's this awesome stuff we're finding out about. Maybe it was like comets or what are those? Yeah, comets that had water ice in them and crash here. How do we get these waters in ourselves? So it says, which are the waters that subsided, as shown before, it is evil spirits that flood in. So here we have these evil spirits that we're trying to disperse by wind. When we're getting attacked mentally, emotionally, this is because hell is coming to try to do what hell does, which is dominate and use and destroy. Right? So they're coming into the precious things in your mind and saying, like, we're going to mess this stuff up. We're just going to cause problems. And we're going to attack you and destroy you because to have devoted yourself to what hell is just makes you, instills this rage against goodness and truth. You just want to be mean. You just want to be mean. They crowd in with their delusional thinking. Yeah, what are they doing? What are they doing here? They crowd in with their delusional thinking and stir up the same kind of thinking in us. So all that delusional thinking, because you might say, hey, I've got something in common with evil spirits, that I have delusional thinking. I can't get out of these thoughts. That very stirring up can be like the sediment that they're kicking up in us. When something banishes these spirits, or rather the hallucinations they induce, and I wouldn't say this is necessarily literal hallucinations, but I guess you could mean that. The word describes the wind, and in fact the east wind, as the agent. Everything is symbolic. Everything is a correspondence. The east is where the sun rises. So what is this east wind? For an individual who is being tested, that's too big. The circumstances surrounding the end of the struggle's commotions or waters are the same as those for a larger collection of people, as I have learned from much experience. So when we talk before about these large, let's say, you can have whole groups of people. If these, remember, this is external struggles. Whole groups of people can be harmed by some kind of destructive group or entity or phenomena, and people can go through a whole struggle together. That the process of a whole society goes through is like the same process that we go through. There are always these repetitions of scale where there's I feel like I use that word too much, but microcosm, like a little version of the big thing. So to know that our little struggles are this same struggles the human race is facing, the same struggles that every grouping of consciousness faces. As I've learned from much experience, evil spirits. So how does it all come into play, and how do we get this? We've got these evil spirits. They're a problem. When are we going to get this wind in here, and what's it going to do, and what's it made out of? Evil spirits in the world of spirits sometimes form gangs and cause disturbances, but they are dispersed by other groups of spirits that generally approach from the right and so from the east. Spiritual directions. So relative to where you are, okay, we talked about this in other shows, right? What's important for this one is we've got these evil spirits, and let's actually personify them a bit here. It's the negative thoughts and feelings that these people will carry that are pumping into you, right? And that are degrading your ability to live and pulling up all the negative stuff that we do harbor and sort of attach onto and love, pulling that up and whipping it up into a frenzy here. But there is this other group of spirits that are coming in, that now we're getting to the east wind here. So what is the interaction between these two? So somehow these are dispersing these spirits, because it really is spirits that disperse evil spirits. Only spiritual things can disperse spiritual things, and only you couldn't, like, it would be a little bit cartoony for there to be evil spirits, which are, if you break it down, it's just false beliefs and false motivations, because any person that harbors those and those motivate that person to go act and do something mean, that's really the beliefs and ideas in that person. So if you take that to spirits, that spirits are acting in a negative way, affecting you in a negative way, it's because they are motivated by those same beliefs and feelings. So, but those are very human things, like an idea and a motivation, that you have to be conscious and rational-ish to be doing that, right? So if those were dispersed by something just like physical, like wind, it seems a little cartoony to me. Like how can you, if you think about greed, how wind disperse greed? What disperses greed in a person, right? It's empathy. It's understanding that other people have scarcity. It's understanding the impact of what you're doing on yourself. It can't be something less intelligent, like wind is dispersing something that's more complex and interacts with human intelligence, like greed. So here, it's not just wind, it is these spirits. And so it's the ideas that they stand for, the beliefs that they have, that come in and push out these other beliefs, which I think is fitting and right. So where were we? Oh yeah, from the right and so from the east. These groups strike such fear and terror into the evil spirits that they cannot think about anything but running away. You don't really think of evil spirits having fear and terror, but if you built your life on falsity, you sure don't like things that are going to expose that. Though they had ganged together, they scatter in all directions. And this is the way in which such coalitions of spirits mobbing together for evil purposes are dissolved. It's like crowd control. You know, you've gone past the laws of however the spiritual, justice system works. So you're getting together, you're harming all these people, we have to disperse you. The groups of spirits who disperse by this method are called an east wind. So the east wind is something that any group participates in when it's doing this function. Everything in the spiritual world is function related. So are you an east? Right now, today, I'm acting as the east wind. Countless other ways of disbanding them exist, and these too are called east winds. So it's even a whole category of action. So, we're getting into such nebulous stuff because we don't know the basics of how this dispersing works. But if we take it down to a level in this world, so what's the east wind? If you look at evil spirits as, here, if we're going to do physical correspondence or metaphor for them, so in the people here, in all of our spirits that are living in all of our bodies, are you with me? Okay, you're not? Okay, that's fine. we have some kind of belief system that is causing us to harm other people in the human race. Okay, so how do you tackle that? There are huge pockets of human endeavor to think, how do you combat misinformation and spread true information? How do you combat harmful motivations and try to get people to wake up to the harm that's in them? People will launch media campaigns, social media campaigns. People will go out and do lectures and awareness campaigns. People will pass certain laws. There's all kinds of methods you try to get to disperse this problem, to disperse this crowd of negativity. So all of those things together, even though they might be very different, like it's very different to actually like be going out and forming the actual barriers, like you're doing some kind of police work or something that where you're actually trying to stop people from harming each other, or cybersecurity or something, versus an awareness campaign to try to stop the root causes of it, or to try to alert the general public that this is something we need to address. Those are very different actual work days, but they'd both be the east wind because they're both doing the same thing. There's different parts of what is the east wind there, which is like, I like it. With the Lord's divine mercy, they will be described below. And if you want, listen, I'm saying, you can go check this stuff out. I was even saying, this is too nebulous. Let's think of a physical example. You don't have to hang out here with me and do that. You can go check out these numbers. And he describes these other methods of spiritual disbursement. But it's good for us to think about it here because we're living here. And it all comes back into how we act here. When the evil spirits have scattered and the mob and its agitation are past, a calm or silence occurs. And we feel that when the thunderstorms of the heart and mind have passed, when the trial is over. Okay, so I was just doing that. I was just doing this because I was saying this is the group here. But he's saying this is the case. The case is similar for an individual during times of trial. In those periods, the person is surrounded by a crowd of the same type of spirits as above. And after they have been driven off or dispelled, there is a kind of calm. The first step in putting everything where it belongs. So to the meteorologist who is still watching, I'm sure, this deep into it, when we're in this state where we are being attacked, you just feel under siege by, it can seem like a combination of life events and then the beliefs and attitudes you have around them. Just seems like life is pulling in. At certain times, that's because we have this spiritual weather pattern, which is all this, the gang of hell is around us and trying hard. But when we're liberated from that, that's because the east wind, whatever goodness and truth is in there, so terrifies what these spirits stand for that they disperse. And that's when we feel like the sun comes out. And that is why we draw this sun and these clouds, because it's the same thing. It's just another layer of it. There's a kind of calm. Oh, yeah. After they have been driven off or dispelled, there's a kind of calm. The first step in putting everything where it belongs. Because if you remember back to the very beginning of this whole thing, we were talking about the east wind. And yeah, I can say remember, but let's go remember. Let's remember. Let's force ourselves to remember. The wind passed over the earth and the water subsided as putting everything in its proper place. Because all of this is not just, here are problems popping up here. We solved the problem. We're back to where we started before the problem was. The only reason why we're even allowed to go through these periods where we are under siege is that there is a larger process going on, which is that everything is getting put in its proper place. Didn't we say earlier that we are being remade? We are the earth. You remember, originally that was compared with this, right? We are the earth. We are getting formed, just like there's a description of the earth getting formed in the creation story. So this whole episode where it just seemed like, this is just like weird and messed up and now it's over, this goodness has been accomplished. Like there has been a step taken in the reordering and restructuring of how we think about life. And this is not something that is hard to defend, isn't it? That so many people who have gone through hard things come out the other side able to better educate people on what is needed with more clarity for themselves. There's certainly something to, I've been through that and now I know how to combat it. And now I know a little more of who I am and where my center is. So it is with us. And I think but without really being aware of that, oftentimes we can't see the progress. So it's good to keep in mind that what seems like chaos is orderly progress. That this is what God is doing this whole time, that even though it's hard to sense that divine operation. Before being reduced to order, it is very common for everything to fall into confusion or seeming chaos. This allows things that cling together poorly to separate. And when they have separated, the Lord arranges them in their place. Okay, that's really good. That's really important. So this, I'm sitting here and saying to you, yeah, man, you got to have these like struggles and then you get better. And you may say, how so? Like, how does that make any sense? It just sounds like something-ish, but it's not really, there's no real hard scientific reason why that would matter. This is how I see it. So if we're in our minds here, there are things that cling poorly together, and I will try to diagram this out. So when we're going about our life, as we're growing up, right? And I mean growing up spiritually, like going from self-centered, materialistic, false beliefs to becoming an angel, right? To have love guiding everything you do and truth guiding everything you do. We have a lot of stuff that doesn't belong together. We have, I was just reading some Swedenborg, that we have like, I'll do impulses and thoughts. We have good impulses, like certain impulses that are towards love and are good, but have been caught up and sort of joined to something dysfunctional, like some kind of wound from our past or some kind of selfish tendency that we're allowing to grow. These two things are joined improperly, so that what is trying to be a good urge is actually coming out in dysfunctional ways. Same thing with, like, we have sort of right beliefs in our mind, but they've been colored by false information that we've gotten, so they're kind of stuck together as well. And in this state, God can't really operate through this stuff, because we're trying to say, okay, think about life as it really is, but every time we trigger this truth, this falsity is right there on it, so you don't get the true message. And every time God is trying to stir our hearts with this sort of love, there's this negativity on it that kind of pulls it into some dysfunctional, unhelpful direction. But when we're in this shaking where everything comes in, and you have all of this evil kind of agitating the system, like think of them literally shaking us in this metaphor so that everything gets stirred up. And then in all that moving, this stuff separates. Then you've got this thing out here by itself, and then you've got this thing out here by itself. And I think it's true when you're in a crisis. When you're in a crisis, when you're not in a crisis, you tend to hold very tightly to your worldview, and you don't really question things because it's working for you, and you don't do a lot of self-examination because everything's working good and I'm right and I can go forward. But when you're humbled by something and you come up close to your limits, you really are willing to say, like, okay, what really is truth? This is often why we start seeking for things. Is my paradigm that was working before isn't working now. I'm willing to be taught. So once we're in that state where we say, okay, wow, I've been shaken by this. Maybe the person that I just brushed off and thought like they're just dumb and they don't know what they're talking about. I have more empathy and understanding where they're coming from. Some beliefs that I have that I thought were pretty good and kept me warm. I'm like, wow, that's not that great. I'm willing to push away these things. Now this stuff is out and we're willing to scrutinize it. And when it's not wrapped up in our true beliefs and wrapped up in our will, then there can be this grabbing and ordering, because now God can take this stuff and move it out to the periphery so that these goodnesses and truths can be then ordered, because there is a plan that's just as detailed as the cellular division when we're a little tiny fetus and you have to get everything right to grow into a person. So it is that the Lord is saying, well, you need this love here, you need this love here, you need this love here, you need this truth here, you need this truth here, you need this truth here, because I'm going to build you into a spiritual person. That's what this does, is give God the ability to have, it's just like a centrifuge, separate out things that otherwise you could never separate. Nature offers parallels. If you think I'm just describing some process that doesn't occur anywhere, I just said centrifuge, but also Since nature offers parallels, since in it too each and everything first falls into some degree of disorder before being put into order. If the skies did not storm, causing unlike elements to scatter, the air would never clear. Destructive forces would amass and wreak havoc. People talk about even hurricanes relieving the planet of heat. Obviously, meteorologist who's with us, I am not a meteorologist. You just found out, because I probably got that wrong. But the idea is there. The human body displays the same characteristics. Unless all the components of the blood, whether compound or pure, were continuously and cyclically combined and pumped into a single heart first and mingled there, the fluid component would coagulate in a fatal way. If you didn't keep your blood moving, probably. I don't know. I don't know this stuff. But yeah, if your heart wasn't pumping and doing that, if there wasn't this movement and the shaking up, whatever, you wouldn't be able to live. The individual elements would never be distributed to perform their proper functions. Well, of course, yeah, you wouldn't have your oxygen going. Isn't it nice that you just breathe in and all you got to do is breathe in just to the lungs and then the oxygen goes everywhere? That's because the heart, we're continually going through these cycles of getting shaken up and moved around. It is the same with a person who is regenerating. And that's all of you. And that's me. We are going through this. This is not some strange alien thing we're going through. This is what happens in the body every second. This is what happens in the earth, in the atmosphere. This is what happens in heaven. This is what happens with spirits. This is what happens with large and small communities. It's a process. And it can be a process that's not fun, but the result is really good. And the result is the kind of peace and calm that we can get as the atmosphere gets clearer and as we get built into a spiritual person, which is to say we have those evil spirits dispelled, and the spirits that are in the east wind are the spirits of goodness and truth. That becomes the company we keep. And so we reinforce everything that's good and true is reinforced. And you just have this amazing atmosphere in which to live and breathe and hang out. That's the news from heaven. Hopefully it did something good for you. Hopefully you can think about, when you are down, the wind coming in and moving this stuff out, and hopefully that gives you something good. Leave a comment. Let us know how it's treating you. And I want to say that this is, as I was joking about before, this is a strange sort of program. It's actually pretty remarkable that the programming like this can even exist, and the only way it exists is from all of you. So if you haven't already, consider supporting us. We're a not-for-profit organization. We don't sell stuff. We give away everything we possibly can. And the only way we can do that is because, as you'll see here, you may not know that we depend on donor support to create our programming, to share the insights and ideas contained in the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg. Well, we do, and we want to share an opportunity to support our recently established endowment fund for Off the Left Eye. This fund provides us with the ability to offset the costs of production and staffing. Consider your ability to make a gift and visit otle.causevox.com and become a part of our community of donors. And I drew this thing here for you guys. Thank you. And because those of you who have supported in all kinds of ways, I even gave you a squiggly line K there, because this is really great for me and for so many people that we get to do this, and we can only do it because of all of you. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I'll see you on the next episode.